Okay, hi everybody. I had a real deep preamble I was starting with, but Jessie Tarlov is gracing us with her presence a few minutes before she jumps on the five, which I will be glued to the second we're off here. So I wanted to start with her, get a little bit of her thoughts, and we'll get a preview of what she's expecting to be experiencing on the five, which I love watching her and appreciate her voice of reason on that show. She was in DC yesterday of her first inauguration, which I know was her dream as a young kid to be at Donald Trump's inauguration as her first inauguration. Please make sure you're muted. And Jesse, I'm going to throw it over to you.
Awesome. Well, hi everyone. It's great to see you and be back with the lunch with Jamie crowd. I was in DC for a couple of days. It was frigid cold, obviously. There were a lot of people there who were very disappointed that they weren't going to the inauguration, but I would say spirits were still exceptionally high. I mean, this was the real kind of diehard crowd. And there were a bunch of pop-up things that were indoors everywhere. And my hotel was right by the Capital One Arena. And the lineup to get in started for some at 2:30 in the morning. So I don't even know like what the wind chill put it at. But everyone, and I think last time I was on, I said this as well, is like they're so nice. And I'm part of that is because I'm part of the Fox fabric. But everyone was just really positive and joyful about this. Not partisan at all, just like really celebrating, the return of the guy that they like, and happy to see all the news folks down there covering it, and they're very optimistic about what's to come. I had been also pretty optimistic about the possibility of finding pragmatic ways to work across the aisle, and that had been for the last couple of months. And I weighed in a little bit on your WhatsApp chat about that, just saying like we have to be more resilient than resistant this time because it didn't get us anywhere, right? It got you like a huge therapy bill and a bunch of electoral losses, and here we are again. And I was trying to carry that through and made it through about half the day, I would say, feeling that way. And then once the executive orders started, I realized that the trope of take him seriously but not literally is actually not going to fly. And that you had to have taken him literally. And that's where I am at this moment, pretty concerned. I think losing your mind about every single executive action is obviously silly. And some of the things that seem outlandish to us make some degree of Trumpian sense, right? Like in the main scheme of things, if he's going to take away security clearances from former DNI and CIA officials who signed the Hunter Biden laptop as Russian disinformation article or letter, I kind of get that. But the stuff that's really sticking out to me of concern is, 6 months security clearance without a background check for whoever they want. Obviously, things like ending birthright citizenship. I don't know what happens. I mean, Usha Vance and Kamala will get to stay because it was pre this order, but those kinds of things are really sticking out. I don't think we're going to get anywhere being all hot and bothered about the EV mandate going away. Elon will probably be pissed about the subsidies, but I don't think that's where we can really get anywhere. I think the stripping away the Medicare negotiating drug prices is a good place to start. I think Democrats really need to focus in on the bread and butter stuff, like how is this going to affect working and middle class families? You said that egg prices were going to fall on day one. None of the shit that you signed has anything to do with that. And that's really where my focus is going to be today. Getting rid of the CPB one app. Another one, like you said, people should come here the legal way, right? You canceled appointments for tens of thousands of people that have been waiting in Mexico for upwards of a year for their appointment. They didn't walk across the border and, kill a young American girl. They have been waiting patiently. So those are the kinds of things where I think we really need to put our energy towards, and fighting back against this seriously but not literally thing. I think that's going to be very important for us.
I appreciate all those thoughts and those points.
It
Give
was
us a
very scattered.
little.
I apologize. It was
No.
not
It's so
prepared that
helpful,
way.
and
Yeah.
you did a favor by coming on. What's your give us a preview of your friends Greg and Jesse and the other your other panelists are going to say about how inspiring and unifying and positive and uplifting his inaugural speeches were. How are they gonna? What are they gonna say to that? Out of curiosity.
They're just gonna, best day ever. And I don't think it's worth our time to really fight with that. I'm just saying, yeah, sure, it was the best day ever for you, but like, let's take this in practical terms, right? Like, best day ever. He said, I want a record level of Latino support. Absolutely true. Why did you take down whitehouse.gov in Spanish? Why did you disable the Spanish language Twitter account? Like, the practical stuff is the only way to do this because we have never and will never understand how they feel about him that way. Like how you can listen to the same speech and we just have night and day reactions to it. And they'll just say, oh, he was joking about this or that. But I think it's very clear he's not joking about Liz Cheney. He thinks he won the Gen Z vote, right? He said it was like 36 points yesterday. I am going to bring that up to just say one of the main talkers and things we'll be discussing is, he's the most transparent president, right? Because he's doing these press conferences and he already said to Peter Doocy, who's our chief White House correspondent, like, well, Biden didn't do any of this. And yeah, he didn't. And he really fucking should have. He should have had more press conferences. But just talking doesn't mean anything when you're lying. And I think that that is really the way forward and kind of pushing back on this.
All right, I appreciate it. I not to harp on things like this, but I loved in the press in his conversation from the White House where he talked about how Spain was a part of BRICS multiple times, and
Yeah.
none of the journalists corrected him, and he also did he kept double down on it. Anyway, not the things we should
No,
focus on.
no, I mean, it's meaningful just in terms of the operation of the government and how other people think of us. But there's nothing we can do about it now. Like, there are so few avenues of pushback that we have to really pick and choose our spots. And I think all of them have to revolve around delivering from the voter for the voters that we lost,
Yeah,
who I don't think are closed door to us for the future.
yeah,
Or I'm
and
banking on that.
pardoning people who had violence against police officers, which the Republicans are angry about. We've already seen it.
Yeah,
Thompson just came
yeah,
out being angry, and so hopefully
yeah.
they'll push
We
back.
gave them, unfortunately, a little bit of fodder too. I
Yeah,
mean, they're not comparable, and we're going to be talking about that. But
yeah.
anytime where we get down in the dirt a little bit, they are much better at exploiting that than
Right
we
on.
are. So,
All right,
and it
go.
was great to see all of
Thank
you.
you. Good to
Have
see
a great
you.
session.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. All right,
Bye,
bye.
guys.
Um, all right, now I'm going to go back to my preamble. First of all, I know there's some people on here that lost their homes in the fires and are evacuated from the fires still. My heart breaks for you. And if you need anything, you know how to reach me and other people on this Zoom and around. And I'm sending you love. My plan was not to watch the inauguration at all. That was my plan. I told my daughters that I turned it on at 9 a.m. Jessica Yellin and I were at a wedding in Miami. I turned it on as I was about to go to the gym before I made my journey back to LA, and I left it on as I went to the gym. Then I left it on as I went back to finish packing. Then I left it on as I got in the car to go to the airport. Then I left it on as I went through security and left my phone on so I wouldn't miss anything. And then I proceeded to watch for the entire 6 hours, although I took an hour break to watch an episode of Slow Horses. I then went back to it and I turned it on and kept it on until I was told by my wife we're not allowed to have it on at home. So I got home, watched the national championship game. And like most of you, I had so many who did watch it, and I hope that was very few of you. I had so many emotions. I had joy, I had anger, I had sadness, I had more anger, I had confusion, I had more anger, probably more confusion, more anger. I really genuinely cycled through every emotion that I knew I had or thought I had or didn't know I had. My goal was to enter this presidency with, I don't want to use the word optimism because I think that sounds slightly strange, but I want Donald Trump to succeed as president. I want America to succeed. I want the country to grow stronger. I want wars to stop. I want people to stop being suffering and in pain, and the economy to continue improving, and everything everybody here wants. But he's not making it easy in day one, and I think we are all aware that the Democratic Party needs a complete rethinking and reimagining and retooling. And although I'm one of those people who likes to say that, this wasn't an annihilation that people like to declare, but it was an ass whooping, and I think it's important to remember that. I feel like one of the things I always say I'm lucky about is since I got to go to college in Georgia and I've made movies in Iowa and Pennsylvania and, and been traveled throughout the country, that my eyes are maybe a little more open to what's been going on across the country. But, obviously my eyes were not open wide enough. I was, as we, not to go back to the election, but I was surprised, not shocked at the outcome. And like many of us, we had blinders on. And I think it's critical for me personally now that I work really hard to engage with people at different points of view and different perspectives, read more, listen more. I'm told I'm not allowed to listen to Fox News consistently in my house, so I have to find other places and podcasts and whatnot, or at least when my wife's not paying attention. But we have a ton of work to do, and we have a ton of work to find what we weren't paying attention to and listen to the people we weren't paying attention to, and to try and understand different perspectives that we weren't listening to. And that's the approach I'm going to take. I think Jesse just did sort of harp on one of those things, which is people like to say, don't listen to what Trump says, listen to what Trump does. That is, I think, only true to a certain extent. And we saw from these executive orders that he's at least going to try and do a lot of things he has no power to do. But he's going to try. So anyway, I have a lot of work to do. I think everybody has a lot of work to do. I'm hoping the idea of this was, Jessica Yellin and I, although we were at a wedding together this weekend, I actually don't think we really spoke. So we're just now, you and I are really just about to have a bit of a conversation with, 100 friends listening in and participating where appropriate. And I also want to use this as a moment to thank Jessica. What she's doing at News Not Noise is such a critical thing. She is doing everything she can to stay straight down the center. We need to find people like her and people who are slightly on the right and slightly on the left and support them, pay attention to what they're doing, pay for their Substacks. Jessica has a Substack, which I know all of you are members of. And if you're a free member, sign up and pay today. If you're an annual member, then pay for her founding member. But we really need to focus and prop up these news sources that are doing everything they can to get facts to us. And everybody's biased in some way. And I think it's important that we support, again, not only people who are left leaning, but also people who are right leaning. I think we have to figure out a way to come to the center, and we're not going to be able to do that with just supporting people who have the same views as us. And we need to make sure that we listen and that we encourage dialogue and conversation, and we get out of our echo chambers, however that is. And I tried hard to create a non-echo chamber here. I failed. This is our echo chamber, but it's important to all of us to go bring those perspectives that we aren't getting here to back to this conversation, and to bring those voices. I mean, I'm not going to stop trying. And for those of you on here that either supported Donald Trump or voted for Donald Trump or are just are Republicans, then I'm excited and encouraged to have dialogue and conversation. Jessica, I'm gonna turn to you to give a little bit of where your head's at right now, and It's nice to see you again.
It's good to see you. Also, thank you very much for that lovely endorsement. I appreciate it. And if I could also just take a moment to say that I know we're all still in a bit of shock, at least I am, and coming out of, well, living through the wildfires and hopefully coming out of them. To anybody here who has really suffered a loss, my heart also goes out to you. I am happy to use my platform to share information you need shared or provide you information from what I can find online. So do let me know. You can reach me through Jamie. And Jamie, thank you and Kelly for what you guys have done for the city. It's been awesome. I guess my first reaction after Trump's inauguration was A, he is great TV, and B, totally not surprised. This is exactly what he said he would do. Anybody who thought these things weren't going to happen wasn't paying attention. He was not dishonest. He delivered on what he said. There are some areas where sometimes he says different things, different versions of the same thing. I'm not going to pardon any J6 quote hostage who committed violence. But he also said he would. There's just a litany you could find for any of the things he did at a time when he's repeatedly said it. And I think we're in for a period of really dramatic change. I hear a lot of, the media and progressives saying things like, well, this won't fly in the courts, or this is too outrageous. And I don't think we know what our courts will do now. I don't think we know. And I think that for a lot of people, because I hear this from my audience a lot, like I'm so upset, I'm so triggered, I've never been more depressed, I can't pay attention, I can't look away. One thing, and I hope we can talk a little bit more about strategies for engaging with the news and the information. I just think we're at a point where we have to both listen to the American people, and Jamie, I couldn't agree with you more. What did Democrats miss? And also listen to see what Trump is really going to do and how it's going to be implemented before you decide what your actions are going to be. Because a lot of this stuff, they don't know how they're going to implement it. They're kind of, mass deportation, throwing spaghetti at the wall, and they're going to see what's going to stick. And we're going to have to kind of watch that, learn what it really is going to look like before people decide, here's how I can engage to take action. I just know that from the last time around, getting panicked about all the sort of signaling things does not work. I'll just share this and then we can go into some question if you want, Jamie. When Trump was first elected, I remember reading this incredibly prescient article by an Italian journalist who said, to my American friends, please learn from our errors with Silvio Berlusconi. Let me tell you what we did wrong so that you don't end up with a dynasty of this man in office forever. And he said, our media and elites, intellectual elites, business elites, were filled with scorn for Berlusconi and became outraged every time he did something that broke a norm or was gauche and inappropriate, or when he sort of tweaked cultural sensitivities. And they would get all up in their high dudgeon and be, outraged. And that would amuse him and endear him to his base, because part of the reason he was elected is because the people were so unhappy with the power structure, with how things worked. And the elites are seen as a repository as the keepers of that power. And so anytime journalists would get outraged, it would make it seem like he was actually shaking things up. And so I took that through the Trump years, and it was always sort of like, this isn't really the way to go. When the resistance movement was so loud about the constant, the sky is falling. So it's about picking strategic moments, picking policy issues, telling the American people what is working for them and what isn't on a substantive level that impacts their lives. And the last thing I'll say before we go into whatever you want to ask, Jamie, is I think the most important political moment other than Trump's election was Luigi Mangione. And the fact that so many people, and not just young people, applauded what he did or said, if they don't applaud it, I understand. That is what Democrats missed. What is the rage that's powering that? What is a sense of helplessness that's making people think violence might be the option? And what's the sense that they are so unheard that they have to celebrate somebody who gets attention in this way? That's where the American people are right now. And that's the piece I think Democrats completely miss.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And I think that Berlusconi reference is great to share. Thank you. That was an article. So that
Yeah,
was,
I can look for it. It was
yeah.
from 8 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, you brought something up that I think is really critical, and I think this is challenging for all of us, which is, as someone described to me when Trump originally was president, which I thought was really smart, which was, he's like the best magician, right? He's saying, look over here, while the real stuff is going on over here. And we're so good at that. I mean, he can get us riled up about so many things that are ultimately just not that important, but they just get, liberals or progressives or Democrats so angry. And I think, interestingly, one of those that came up yesterday was the Gulf of America comment. And we were in the Uber, and I told the kids and Kelly what Trump just said, and they couldn't believe it. I mean, they just was like, that's not real. And our Uber driver said, "Oh, he's gonna name it the Gulf of Trump next," which I thought was so brilliant. Guy was from Brazil, and I don't know what to make about that. I don't know. I mean, Ron DeSantis, I heard already, has used it today when he was talking about the storms in Florida, and it makes me so angry. But I don't know if we're in a place, like, I just don't know. I just don't think we can care about that. That's one of those things where he knows that's just going to get people so mad that you're going to forget about, these executive orders he's doing, or whatever it is. And but the challenge becomes, where do you draw the line? Where is the line of when we don't care about what he's saying or what he's doing?
So there are so many of those moments where you're like, I can't believe he's doing this. And this is, we're back to Trump. But I think that's a perfect example of the kind of thing the Berlusconi author would say, put that aside, focus on the issues that are going to impact people's daily lives and bottom line. And I think, it's important to frame the stakes for some people in the country right now. I've said to people in private conversation that Trump's going to build concentration camps in America. And during the election, I'd say, I can't believe America's okay with concentration camps here. And people would say to me, they're not concentration camps. He's not going to do that. I'd say, well, he is rounding up people of specific nationalities. He's going to hold them indefinitely in camps without charges. And where they have no rights, they can be made to do labor, and we don't know what will come of them. That's a concentration camp. And you put it that way, and people go, you're right. Or, you'll argue, but it reframes it. And I think once you appreciate the dire stakes that we're talking about, things like Gulf of Trump seem silly. And the question then and so I think remembering what's really going to happen is what helps us kind of discern where to really put our energy and attention. And I think that's, there are a couple of buckets of radical policy change that are going to have such a profound impact on us. It's going to become clear in time that that's the place to focus one's energy. And the rest, anyway, we can talk about what they are.
Well, we'll go into that. What are the couple
I think
places
it's
you see?
definitely immigration. And I believe that on mass deportation, what we're going to see is not a rounding up of criminals, because mostly that's done. Mostly, first Obama and then Biden got the people who had any kind of criminal record out. They are some in jails, and they could go into the jails and take those people out and deport them. But you actually get into a weird state, federal, local conflict there over jurisdiction. Then the question is, how do you double the number of people they already deported in a year? So I think, they said 1 million in a year. And I think they want to do shock and awe, right? They want to upset liberal sensibilities on this. And so I think they'll do spot raids, but I think we'll see people's dry cleaners, small business owners swept up in this. It's possible they've said if somebody is with a criminal and they are themselves undocumented, they will also go, and then they can tell their children, do you want to stay home alone or come with us to the concentration camp, right? And so we're going to see some extremely draconian things happening, and there'll be legal challenges, but Tom Homan's not the kind of guy who's going to pause his efforts. So one of the things Trump signed yesterday was an order that creates a DHS, undocumented task force in every state. So, for California in particular, we wanted to be this sanctuary place, and LA wanted to be a sanctuary state. I don't know that we still can be when we need federal funds to rebuild. So how is that going to change? So that's one area. I think climate change and energy is another. We could go on. I think they're going to do a lot on child labor. Once immigrants are gone, undocumented workers are gone, who's going to do the work? Trying to lower child labor laws, those kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. You said something in your newsletter about Trump being at the apex of his power right now. And, some GOP allies say Trump has 100 days to enact this agenda. Can you kind of elaborate on that for us?
Sure. I know this is like the inverse of what most Democrats feel right now, but Trump, there's all this hope and promise around Trump for his voters. And he has cobbled together an extremely unlikely coalition. And Republicans are, inside the Beltway Republicans who've seen a million things, and they just are sort of watching to see how long this holds. And there are a number of interests inside Trump world that are very powerful that are at odds. So there's so much energy and hope around him right now from his people. And he has maximum influence with Congress because they all want to be on his good side and they all want to get their agenda pushed forward. But, I think Democrats, almost universally in DC believe they'll win the midterms in 2 years. We'll see. But if that gives him 2 years to get his agenda enacted, because if they win at least one House of Congress, Democrats can block his agenda after that. Take back 6 months because that's 6 months of campaigning. Congress doesn't get much. He gets 18 months of Congress to get stuff done. A lot of the Republicans I talk to think he really has only 100 days before all the factions of his coalition start to go to war. And I'll give you an example. You have like the Wall Street finance crowd of Trump support and classic, corporate CEO world versus the tech billionaires who want very different things, right? And then you have and quite conflicting. Like the tech billionaires feel like no regulations for us, regulations for those people. They're not creating innovation. Trump wants these tariffs that are at odds with what tech billionaires want, right? So how are you going to negotiate all this? The feeling is that politically it'll just crumble in time and they'll start to be at odds with one another. I wouldn't overstate that. Trump is he controls all of Washington and arguably maybe the Supreme Court. He's going to be able to get a lot done, but we're going to start to see, insiders think that he'll start to falter after 100 days.
Do you think he underestimated the Republicans' thoughts against pardoning the January 6th, rioters? I mean, the fact that you had so many Republicans, I mean, so many is a stretch, but you had Lankford, you had Tillis, you had Murkowski, Cassidy, Cornyn, all come out and say some version of definitely not support and a lot of condemnation. I mean, they're sort of thankfully stepping up in some way, and they know that they're not going to be he's not going to be fans of anybody who makes those comments.
I mean, I appreciate where like the frustration comes from and the surprise. I just don't know what they're going to do about their disappointment and disagreement. They don't stand up to him. So what does that amount to? And I saw Thune, who's the new majority leader, say, we're focusing on the future. He had said, none of the violent offenders should be pardoned. He was asked by Manu Raju, well, like they were, how do you feel about that? He's like, we're not, I'm focused on the future. So, they're going to put that behind them. Many of them would point out that Biden issued an unprecedented number of pardons, not only for his family, but for convicted drug offenders who Democrats would say they got unreasonably long sentences and it was a kind of racial bias, they would say they were in jail and were let out for crimes they were found guilty of. How can you tell us this is different, right? I understand the difference. They don't see it. And I don't see the Republicans doing in Congress doing anything really about it. I don't know what they could do.
Well, I mean, listen, I think speaking up is a start. I mean, it's something, as opposed to just day one. I mean, you would think they would at least he would have a 24-hour grace period, maybe with his, disciples to not come back at him for something. So that's my eternal optimism, I guess.
I think, my sense is they might have been planning to not pardon the most violent ones. And then they saw what happened with Biden's pardons and they're like, F it. He also said he'd be a dictator on day one. And then, so that was his dictator moment. That among others.
Yeah. Talk to us about the media a bit. I mean, you were been working in the media for a long time. What do you think the role is today, now more than ever, of the media? And I obviously say that loosely today. I don't even know what that means anymore. But I know it's more important than ever. And so what are you hoping for? What do you think's realistic? Who's doing the best job of it?
I have CNN and all the places on CNN, MSNBC, Fox on all day. I'm one of the few people who still watches them. They don't have nearly the eyeballs that we all think they do. I believe that the most important thing the media can do right now is explain. It used to be fact check. Now people don't even believe fact check. Still do it, but you're not going to convince people who don't want to be convinced. I think what we don't get is there's not a lot of tying what's happening there to what the impact is for you and explaining. I mean, that was Biden's greatest weakness, in my view, was he did all these things for the economy, but had nobody in his administration who could, Bill Clinton style, tell you how it helped you. And it didn't have to be him. It could have been like any press secretary, a vice president, like somebody who could explain it. I think that's part of what the media needs to do, and we don't for a huge slew of reasons. That includes often reporters don't know because they're moving so quickly, they just report the headline and have to move on. And so I always think like what I do, I call it, they say Uber's the last mile. A lot of public transit can get you far, but you can't get home. How do you get this home? And you need the people who know how to communicate to say what's happening and who have the time to like research it and learn. So that's one. I do think that the media has fallen into this trap of getting, for lack of a better word, so many writers here, so help me come up with a better word, shrill in their communication. And that turns off viewers and makes it seem as though they're partisan, even when what they're saying is actually true. And sometimes it's just a matter of like the adjectives you use, the tone you use, your pacing, staying calm, and saying like giving him some, acknowledging something that they didn't, he said he'd do this, whatever it is. So I think it's a tone question. And I think that anybody who's like a Democratic donor or out there like trying to make a difference has to get sort of savvy about where people are getting their news. And one of the most troubling and I think failed parts of our last cycle was all the Democratic support for creators on social media who pretended to be news outlets, but were secretly funded by partisan PACs, pumping out biased propaganda while pretending to be news, which on the Democratic side only served the purpose of making tons of Democrats think that they were surrounded by people who shared their views and made them completely surprised when Trump lost. And they got all, and that is as misleading as what a lot of Democrats and liberals say the right does. It's not effective. It doesn't work. And Americans who are independents and centrists and gettable feel it. And the open space right now, and I'll stop, is for the media is the center. There's very few places speaking to the center right now in a way they can hear.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I'll one up you. I still get the actual newspaper, Jessica.
What?
So I'm yes, I still get the printed New York Times. Um, Yeah, I mean, listen, I pray that we have, conservative voices on CNN or MSNBC and vice versa on Fox News. And as opposed to people just sitting there and waiting for a gotcha moment, there's actual conversation where people are actually can say, oh, wow, that was an interesting way of looking at something. I never looked at it that way. It seems pretty obvious and it seems like an easy way to have a conversation, but for some reason we've lost that. Obviously, News Not Noise is the number one place to get news that
Yeah.
is unbiased. But who do you look at? And actually, the thing I'd be most curious, and this is more homework I need to do, who on the quote unquote conservative news media or right-leaning news media do you feel like you're getting interesting information from? I think obviously the Free Press is doing great work and they are lean very conservative in many areas and sometimes even too conservative from my point of view. And I also think I just there was one other person, but anyway, where do you think you're getting? Oh, left, right, and center. I was obviously David Grand. They do a great job of bringing together. I think that's a really smart conversation. Where else do you find an interesting way to get different perspective?
The Dispatch is a good source for sort of informed, fact-based, thoughtful, right, center right news. I'm assuming a lot of people follow the Free Press, which is a conservative outlet, if you ask me. I think that there's plenty of good reporting in the Wall Street Journal. And you don't have to love what they say on the, opinion page, but you can get a POV from their reporting. I personally make a choice to follow on social media places like Breitbart. I have Fox News on. I also follow a bunch of Trumpy accounts, not Trump, but sort of Trump, what's it called? Fanboys, kind of those big accounts. If you want to know what they are, there's a guy named DC Drano. I'm happy to put together a little list if you want to start following some of the right-wing guys who back him. The Bulwark is one of my favorite sources. They are never Trumpers, though. Steve Bannon is a great follow. Someone's writing in. Absolutely. What he says often happens, so it's worth paying attention to that. And I end up getting links from a lot of these guys. I also think Axios does an exceptional job of giving you a sense of what Trump folks are thinking and doing in a way that's very clean, right? You don't have to, you just get the information and can move on. I also personally read Politico, Punchbowl News. If you want to see what's happening on Congress, Punchbowl's a great source. But you have to the National Review is a substantive outlet that is aligned with Trump. I don't think they're going to give you they'll give you the sort of analytical framework for seeing how they're making sense of the thing that you don't understand how any rational person can believe that. They're going to help you see why folks are believing that. But they're not going to tell you the behind the scenes reel of what's going on in the same way that, I think an Axios or a journalism outlet would.
Right,
and
yeah.
and I'll just say, I think that's a lot of what's going to happen is stuff behind the scenes that we're not seeing.
I think Jasmine Crockett has joined us, maybe by phone. I know she's in the middle of things, but I wanted to just get her perspective. She says she's here. Jasmine, if you're here, can you unmute yourself? Maybe she's not here. All right. She said she's here.
Can I add one thing? Somebody wrote
yes,
in saying
please.
Breitbart does not follow basic
Can you
journalism.
hear me?
Oh, there you are.
Oh, she's
yeah,
up.
we
Okay.
got you. Hi, Jasmine.
Okay, sorry.
No, no
Hey,
worries.
and definitely everyone in LA, I'm sorry for what's going on, and just know that I stand 10 toes down for whatever fight we may have to get the federal government to act like we're the United States of America and make sure that you get the resources that you need to get back on your feet. So, but thanks, Jamie, for the invite, and I've got a couple of minutes before I head into the Capitol.
Yeah, as you know, one of the leaders that I've gotten to know and I think is such a smart and rational voice coming from Texas, who can see different perspectives and different sides. Obviously, you know, we spent the last 45 minutes just talking about the challenges and also how critical it is to kind of reach our arms out wider and eyes open wider to other people who may have different perspectives. But obviously, you're in the belly of the beast right now. You're going to be the people we need fighting harder and more than ever. And I'm just curious and where your sort of head's at and how you suited up for battle today. And would love for you to share for a few minutes.
Prayer. No, I mean, I'm laughing, but no, there has been tons of prayer. And I've been telling people that I'm probably going to look more like Marjorie in a minute because yesterday during the inauguration, I refused to turn the TV on and instead decided that I needed to inflict pain on myself in the gym. So I'm doing that. But beyond that, I had a couple of conversations with my team this morning, my district team as well as my DC team, explaining that we're instituting like new protocols. We're going to do things such as have weekly 30-minute meetings that will take place where my ledge team is going to communicate to all of my elected local leaders and talk about kind of what the latest drama is, so to speak, and how it impacts our constituents. So, for instance, with everything that's happening with the talk about ICE raids and that kind of stuff, as well as the talk about arresting, you know, officials that are in sanctuary cities, we want to basically give kind of like briefings on whatever the topics are for the week. And because we anticipate there's going to be so much, we're going to do that weekly and then allow for them to submit questions and start to compile a frequently asked questions type of booklet. But we will send out en masse kind of to them what all we're doing to answer those questions. In addition to that, we are about to do an advisory for our schools around children, specifically in immigration, so that we're going to send that out to our entire district. We also are going to try to team up with the other two Democrats that are in my area and do a larger kind of know your rights deal. We've already got members that have started to kind of put together some of the information that they'll need, like some handouts, some quick, easy kind of handouts. So we're going to do that in person as well as stream it, and start to really build an even closer, I guess, rapport with my district than we've ever had, just to make sure that they're educated. When I got on, I know, you know, there was a discussion about rhetoric being put into various places. We want to make sure that we arm our people with the truth. So we're going to kind of beef up our communications overall.
Let me ask you one question before I let you go. One thing Jessica and I were talking about earlier was just that Trump's ability to kind of distract people from the important issues, and the Gulf of America being one example. How do you not let yourself get riled up with things along those lines and focus on, the critical issues? And obviously you're in Texas, and immigration being, one of the most important topics. Like, how do you pick and choose what to let him get you angry about, or to distract you from the critical things that you do need to fight against?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think is important, I was just telling an AP reporter earlier today that there are those that are just kind of frustrated by the collective of it all, which he's a master at it. Like, let me throw everything against the wall and just make everything chaotic. But one of the things that we were able to do really effectively when Elon Musk took down the continuing resolution is we were able to really figure out what is like at least a good trigger point for like most people, like a baseline. And for the CR, it was the child cancer research, taking that money out that really enraged people kind of across the board. And so my goal is to get the caucus to kind of focus on 3 things that we know are resonating more so than just with our base, but just kind of with Americans as a whole, and focus on those 3 things, as well as understand that we have to do some retail politics. We have a branding issue, and so we have to make sure that we are hitting against their brand very aggressively. We know that there's this perception that he's so strong and that kind of stuff, so that's why he just does all kinds of idiotic things, and there's a perception that Democrats are weak. So it was one of the reasons that also in the CR fight, we talked about the fact that really he's just nothing, and that Elon Musk is pulling all his strings, which really got under his skin, but it also started to kind of show that he's weak. So we also have to figure out, you know, what exactly we can collectively agree on as far as like what's most effective to kind of attack the brand on as well. But I really want them to expand our communications team a lot. I think legislation is dead. Like, we're not getting anything of value done this term. So, like, stop trying to pretend like we're about to do great legislation with Trump. I mean, I may get some of my criminal justice stuff done because he is a convicted felon. So maybe I can finally ban the box and do some other things, but who knows? Or my Democracy Restoration Act so that felons can vote, so that hopefully his next city council election he can vote. So maybe they, you know, will be down. Who knows? I don't know. So we need to focus on expanding our comms to the extent that we are doing a rapid response. So there's always something that we're rapidly responding to, as well as a few other things. I know you were jumping in.
Great. No, that's great. That's perfect. Well, listen, I Jessica Yellin, I don't know if you have any question before Jasmine goes. I told her I'd only take 5 minutes of her time. I took 10 minutes. So,
I guess I just ask, what's the mood? How upset and agitated are Democrats right now?
I don't know. We really haven't been together a ton, and we
Okay.
obviously haven't been together collectively since inauguration yesterday. There were definitely a fair share that decided to go. I was one of those that opted not to go. So we'll collectively be together tomorrow morning, and I think that that's when I'll have a better idea of kind of, you know, how people are feeling.
There's a
But,
plan. Yeah.
you know, I need us to focus. And the goal right now is 2 years from now. The goal is to show how incompetent they are, so we can't continue to always want to bend over backwards to be the guys to help them. They have a trifecta, so fucking make it work. Like, if it means that if you're saying this is what the country voted for, if it means that the government got to shut down, that's what the country voted for. Like, make them understand that without Democrats always pulling them out and saving them, everything will go to hell.
yeah. Thank you for that. And as Bruce Karich just said, as you mentioned early on, you know, we're going to need you guys fighting for California and for Los Angeles. This disaster is going to take the entire country to help clean up, and California is there for most of these other states and cities when there's disasters.
Yep.
My wife and baby to baby have been there for all their other disasters across the country, and now we need people to help us here. And everybody's been affected in some way, shape, or form if you live in Los Angeles. So thank you for that offer. And Jasmine was one of the first people who reached out to me during the fires. It was very kind of her just to see what was happening and what she could do. And I am very lucky to have gotten to meet her, and she's going to be a critical voice going forward for us in Texas and across the country. So she's promised to flip Texas blue, and I don't know if it was the next cycle or the cycle after, Jasmine. So I'm going to hold you to that. And anyway, so
Probably going to take about 4 years, but we can do it.
All right, 4 years. Andy Bashir also guaranteed Kentucky, so I'm not sure where that stands, but anyway, thank you very much, and you got a lot of fans that are here to help you and support you. So let us know what we can do for you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great, Jasmine.
Yeah. I want to, we're going to end in a few minutes. You know, Fred Rosen put something interesting in the chat, which is going to be a critical topic that we talk about coming up on a Zoom. Originally today, we were going to have some firefighters from LA do a Zoom. I got to go to the LA Fire Air Ops Command Center last week when I brought some food out to them, and these guys were just, and ladies were just extraordinary, and so I wanted to bring them on to a conversation. And but anyway, you mentioned something, in Fred, you said let Trump be Trump for the next 6 months, and let's let him sink on his own. One of the things someone said to me, who was I think voted for Trump, and said the biggest mistake Biden made was ever mentioning Trump's name after he was elected. And, I wonder, not to go back, but I wonder if how true that really was. I mean, if people had just sort of stopped focusing on these big bombs that he drops and stopped focusing on all these aspects, would he have sort of just gone out to pasture? And I wonder if we don't get distracted by all these insane statements he makes, if people like Jasmine Crockett and all the great people there, and the Republicans who have a spine, and we really just focus on the work, if they'll make a difference. Before you answer that, I'm going to let Eric Swalwell chime into that, because he just joined us as well. Eric, are you
Hey, buddy.
here? There you are. Great.
Yeah. What's happening?
Thank you for joining from the halls. I really appreciate it. So
I'd rather be having lunch with you than these guys.
I'm not going to rehash the hour. Jessica Yellin
Yeah.
has been great. We had Jesse
Yep.
Tarlov on.
She's always
Jasmine
great.
Crockett,
Yeah.
she is great. She's the best. The one topic that I want to come back to you I was just talking about was, is that, we all, and we've talked about this, getting distracted by these things that Trump mentions, like the Gulf of America and these sort of insane statements, just to kind of take our eye off the ball. Do you feel that is sort of his special sauce in some ways, with obviously with us as viewers and as just regular citizens, but even with you guys in Congress? I mean, is he just able to kind of get people to focus on the things that aren't critical, so that he can get these things that are really dangerous passed? And how do you stay focused?
So I'm following this time around with, I hope, a little bit of experience and wisdom, a tactic that was taught to me when I was a young trial lawyer, and I would be in court going up against a defense attorney, and the defense attorney would be saying a bunch of outrageous things in their argument or their questioning, and I'd be popping up and down out of my chair making objections. And a more senior lawyer came to me after a break, and he said, every objection you made was correct. You were right on the law, and the judge was with you most of the time. He said, the problem is that you're jumping up and down out of your chair so much, the jury can't tell what's important and what isn't, and it's kind of annoying to them. And his point was, you don't have to object every time. They may say things that are objectionable, but that doesn't mean you have to object. And you want to be really effective, that when you do object, it's for a good reason. And so on Greenland, is it dumb? Yes. Is the Gulf of America dumb? Yes. Do we need to make a big deal out of it? My approach is, well, what does that do to bring down the cost of eggs? Because that's what we were promised, cheaper eggs. And I think he is very insecure about his ability to actually deliver on that. And so he's distracting us with a lot of this nonsense.
That is so smart. And I love that. And I love the reference to you as being a trial lawyer. It's hard not to. And, I know that according to all the Republicans who voted for Trump, he's going to make us look, have a much more prestigious standing internationally. That's what they tell me. I don't really understand, when you make comments like this, how that helps your being the leader of the world. But I have to use that myself. I have to stop getting irritated. And if he wants to call it the Gulf of America, go for it. And so tell us, what's of everything that you've heard and all the things that you've seen in the last 24 hours, what's the number one thing on your, okay, I got to call in the reserves and we're going to fight this. I mean, you can't fight all 200 things at once.
No. So I looked at the stage yesterday. I was in the room, and I chose to go because I thought, I don't want to take my eyes off this guy, right? But I'm going to extend my hand and be a partner with him where I can work to reduce costs, keep us safe. And I wanted that to be clear. But I'm going to use my eyes, my ears, and my voice as a check if that's necessary. And so my concern right now, when I looked at that stage yesterday, is it's clear to me who he thinks about when he, thinks about who he serves and who's important to him. It's the wealthiest among us. And so what we have to do as he passes legislation and his tax cut policy, which will be coming, is we have to be able to frame, okay, to our voters, our constituents, what did you get? I know what Elon and Bezos and others got, but what did you get? And what did you lose in this? And so really bring it back to that, simplistic framing, and not to root against success in business or industry. We want everyone to succeed, but we want to be the guys, the team that connects the dots between a business succeeding and the person who's working their ass off, as a rank and file member of that business, also succeeding. And so, we can root for abundance, but abundance for all is how I'm approaching this. So I'm at the Capitol, Jamie. We have a Homeland Security organizing meeting that I'm heading into. Jasmine Crockett and Dan Goldman and Jared Moskowitz also, they just went on the Judiciary Committee with me. And so, and
great.
also Sydney,
Wow.
your Camleter, Dove, your representative in LA. So we've got like a murderer's row for some of the newer members that are going to be there, and that excites me too.
That's awesome. Jasmine and Dan, that's a great team. All right,
Yeah.
Eric, thank you for your time. We're going to those are really important words that everybody should take, and that's a great thing to leave with. Eric, go fight. You got a lot of friends out here.
I'm all in. I know you guys are too.
Thank you.
All right. Yep. Be safe out there.
All right, it's almost 2. Jessica, I want to thank you again for being here. I don't know if you have anything that's kind of top of mind before we go.
Thank you. And last thing I'd say is just something I hear from my audience all the time, which is, why doesn't anybody understand what we're dealing with? What they say is, I can't afford my health care. I can't afford my rent or my house. I can't sell my house. People seem in LA like they're paying for insurance and then their house burns down and nobody's there for them. And they go through a litany of what's not working. And they say, why does anybody not understand why we're frustrated and why we'd support somebody who's promising change? And I just think that that is the message to return to. No matter what the macroeconomic picture is, so many regular people in their daily lives feel like they can't get any relief in any quarter. And what he's promising is a change. And so the more that Democrats are able to address those issues and actually bring relief here in LA to the wildfires and across the nation, that's what both the Berlusconi author said made a difference. That's what ultimately got Berlusconi out of office, when they were able to deliver on that message. And that's what I think the center of this country wants. And last thing is, in order for Democrats to win, you're going to have to woo some people who voted for Trump or stayed home. And so that means you can't spend the whole next 4 years being only angry at them and thinking they're idiots. Got to find ways to speak to them and deliver some of what they want and find common cause.
I couldn't agree more. And I think those thoughts from Eric and others are so helpful. I mean, I think we have to not get carried away by certain things that are going to really frustrate us and make us angry. I think we have to reach out to other people. We have to open our ears. We have to do a lot more listening and a lot less talking. And I think it's critical that this community really embraces people with different perspectives and people who voted for Trump. I mean, I'm focusing on myself first. That's all I can do. I know I was very closed off to anybody who voted for Trump. I still am confused by it, but I think, Jessica, you brought up the most important thing, which really I didn't think about until after the fact, which is that people just wanted a change. It did not matter who that candidate was. People wanted a change, and we were not listening, and we were not paying attention. And this is the bed that we've made, and we got to lie in it, and we got to figure out how to get out of it and how to come back stronger. And we're going to have to get fired up today. I mean, 2026 is right around the corner, and we're going to have to elect a lot of different people, and a lot of people who speak for people at the center of America. I mean, that's where we all want to be. I mean, we all want to be in the center. That's how America works. It doesn't work from the extremes and people being from polar opposites. So, and we all are so much closer and have so much more in common than we do that separates us. So thank you all for being here. We're gonna, be back soon. Jessica, you're awesome.
Thank you.
Keep doing
Thanks for
what you're doing. Everybody, go pay for News Not Noise. Don't just sign up, pay for it.
Thank you.
And Jessica owes me a tote bag. They have these really cool News
I know,
Not
I'm
Noise
getting you the tote.
bags. Yeah, get me a tote bag.
Okay.
That was really my purpose of having Jessica here. I want a tote bag. So, all right.
On
Thank you
it.
all. We'll see you soon. Okay. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Jean.
Bye.